I'm Roy Potter, a former U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel. Welcome to the Potter Expositor. And good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today is the 4th of October, 2018. I'm Roy Potter. Welcome to the Potter Expositor. I had an entire program set up for this morning, covering basically the disinformation that's coming out of the Democratic Party and the leftist Marxists and the central command center of that, and some other things, and we'll probably get into that. I also have some nuts and bolts of how the Republic operates that you really need to hear as well for those of you who live in particular geographic areas, and we are definitely going to get to that, but it'll be towards the end of this broadcast. What happened was this morning, I didn't check my email last night, and this morning I'm going through and kind of reviewing things, and I find this email. Actually, there were two of them from, and she doesn't like me to call her an investigative reporter. She wants to be called, an analyst. But, in a lot of ways, they're very similar. I saw these two emails from investigative reporter, journalist Vicky Davis. And if any of you were listening to my live stream that I did kind of impromptu yesterday, that spontaneous one, I was talking about information about the left now calling those who support our position information terrorists. And they talk about that we have made an information architecture that is inappropriate in the modern world, is basically what they're saying. Never mind that they can say and do anything that they want. Now, that had to do with an article that was written by Molly McKew for Wired. I think it's Wired magazine. Molly McKew, I saw her name and I knew that she was on the foreign registration situation as a foreign agent for a foreign government. She has the group that signed off on that, as you saw, if you looked into it, was the Podesta group. Interesting. At any rate, this came about because she wrote an article about information warfare, which she claims to be, and I have no doubt she is, an expert on. She's a graduate from Stanford University on this subject, and I wonder why that is, from Stanford, right, if you all know anything about Stanford. But at any rate, she wrote this article about how horrible it is that people like us involve ourselves in information terrorism. And I don't want to get into all the nuts and bolts of that. But she named some particular people, Jack Posobiec, Michael Cernovich. Certainly InfoWars was involved in that. I think she mentioned Roger Stone. And anyway, she's grouping everybody like us who looks at things, worrying about the basic foundation of our constitutional republic, that we are information terrorists. Remember, Barack Obama, who I'm sure she's in love with, if probably wishes she was in actuality, said that he wanted to fundamentally transform America. Why? That's not the oath that he took. That's not what we want. And that's not what we are. They're trying to turn us into something else. And we should resist that with every fiber of our being, which is why we're going to talk about some nuts and bolts towards the end of this broadcast. At any rate, I want to show you, now this isn't always fair to do, but sometimes it's a good idea to put a face with a name. And I don't know if you'll be able to see this. I hope you will. I'm going to increase it a little bit. Who is Molly McKew? Now, it's not always fair, like I say, to show a picture of a person. It doesn't really say a whole lot about them, but first impressions are important. I'm sorry, they are. So for the whole world to know about this Molly McKew that's saying that we are involved in information terrorism, she cited Posobiec, Cernovich, Stone, Jones, and several others. I think she even got Tucker Carlson in there. I'm not sure. I haven't had time to go through all the information that Vicky Davis sent to me. It has to do with tie-ins to Russia, disinformation, which you would think that Molly McKew is saying the Russians are involved in this, but she's actually the one doing it. She also has something to do with the Helsinki Commission, and I'm going to let Vicky explain all that because I didn't have time to go through it. Let me show you a picture of Molly McKew so you can put a face with the name. Can you see all that? Everybody, can you see that? That's Molly McKew. I don't think I'll comment any further. I'll just let it sit there. Now, I will read a couple of things that she said because I think they're important. Like I say, I had an entirely different program this morning until this came up, and I just have to cover it. I just do. In this article that she wrote naming Jack Posobiec and Michael Cernovich, she gets into the Kavanaugh accusations and how that's all that we're not listening to people, that we're not that we're critical. I mean, it gets into a lot of really ridiculous accusations. She's obviously into information warfare. She's not lying about that. She talks about, like I said, information architecture, and it says one of the first things she says is once information architecture is in place, like the MSM doesn't have information architecture, you see, it's a pejorative in this situation. I hope you understand that. It's like pipes. You just inject new material into the system and it gets where it needs to go faster and faster as people get used to receiving narratives and themes in a certain context from certain sources. On the far right in particular has been a concerted effort to recruit people to participate in the process. Like there's something wrong with that? See, it's because anything against their narrative they consider to be evil from their perspective. They consider it to be actions of an enemy. They consider it to be words that should never be spoken, that should be shut up. In other words, 1984. Let me read a couple other things she wrote. I don't want to read about that. She even mentioned Q, but I'm not going to go there. But she does say that it has some interesting connections, and I'll just leave it at that. She also brings up this thing with Blasey Ford, of course, on Kavanaugh, and she says the same information architecture was used to attack Blasey Ford and exonerate Kavanaugh. What? No, the left let Blasey make these accusations, and without any questions. Did you notice that? The attorney Mitchell concentrates. She's a prosecutor, so she knows what she was after. She was after some specific information, and I called it at the time when we were watching it on my periscopes that I did, summarizing what was going on during the breaks, and I could see where she was going with it. She didn't need to attack Blasey's credibility up front. She did it by showing her inconsistencies. Okay, that's how she did it. She didn't actually accuse her or say, okay, what's your proof that this happened on to you? What that kind of a thing. It was all of the other circumstantial evidence that when you put it together shows that her allegations were, at least they didn't have anything to do with Judge Kavanaugh. And by and large, I think the whole thing was just a made-up story. That's how I view it. I think most law enforcement officers looked at that would say the same thing. But at any rate, that was the problem, and so we needed to counter that. But again, here, she calls it information terrorism if you counter their narrative. Do you understand where that's going? If you don't, go back and look at my live stream from yesterday, okay? And you'll understand where I'm coming from on this and how serious it is. Okay, that's all I'll say about it for now. I think I'm going to let Vicky Davis go into the details, but those are the types of people we're dealing with, and it's very, very bad. Very bad. I'm going to play, I will play one clip before Vicky calls in, because this is kind of where I wanted to go initially, but I think it has something to do with what we're talking about. So I want to go ahead and cover this real quick. It's an interview that Sarah Sanders had with the White House press secretary, had an exchange that she had with Jim Acosta. Okay, I want to play this for you because I think it's important to see. Okay, so here we go.
It was pretty obvious that the president was mocking Christine Blasey Ford last night. He said, how did you get home? I don't remember. How did you get there? I don't remember. Where is this place? I don't remember. He seemed to be, to the delight of the crowd there in Mississippi, mocking her repeatedly. Isn't there something wrong with the President of the United States mocking somebody who says she was sexually assaulted?
It seemed to me that he was stating facts that Dr. Ford herself laid out in her testimony. Once again, every single word that Judge Kavanaugh has said has been looked at, examined, picked apart by most of you in this room, but no one is looking at whether or not the accusations made are corroborated, whether or not there's evidence to support them. Every person that she named has come out and said either they didn't recall it or it didn't happen or they weren't there. Every single bit of evidence and facts that we've seen in this moment have supported Judge Kavanaugh's case, and the president simply pointed out the facts of the matter, and that is what the Senate will have to use to determine whether or not they vote to support him or not.
Are you saying Judge Kavanaugh is the victim in all this?
I think both Dr. Ford and Judge Kavanaugh are victims at the hands of the Democrats. I think it is absolutely disgraceful what they've done and exploited this process. They exploited Dr. Ford. They're exploiting all of the women that have come out to make any type of accusation. This isn't the process that should have been done. And certainly everybody deserves to be heard, but that includes Judge Kavanaugh, and that should be part of this process, and the facts have to be looked at, and I think you have to look at the prosecutor's memo. Those are where you see all of those facts laid out, and I think she makes a very compelling case. John, go ahead.
You don't have any problem defending the
I don't have any problem stating facts, no. John.
Thank you, Sarah.
I know that's something you probably do have a problem with, but I don't.
Actually, Sarah, we do state the facts, and I think there have been many occasions when you don't state the facts, if I may respond.
John, go ahead.
Jim Acosta is our chief White House correspondent. You're there in the briefing room. You had a chance to...
Okay, I wanted you to just see that real quick, and we've got a few more minutes before Vicky calls in. Let me play what Tucker Carlson talked about last night. What I'm trying to show you is that any counter that you make to their narrative, they want to say that there's a problem with it. It's not even an intellectual exchange. It's an accusation. Okay. In other words, they make accusations, and then in support of those accusations, they make more accusations. Do you see how that works? They don't address the issues. Now, Tucker Carlson was on last night, and I know these are a little long, but I want you to hear what he says here, too, because I think it's apropos, again, to what we're talking about today. We have this person, Molly McKew, who claims to be an information warfare expert, who calls us, who are opposing her position and the position of leftist Marxists, as being information terrorists. Watch this. He's not going to mention the information terrorists, but I want you to listen to this little clip here. Here we go.
But what's remarkable is that after all we have learned, there are still basic questions that remain unanswered, central ones that pertain directly to the core allegations here, the ones that Christine Ford made more than 2 weeks ago. Yesterday, for example, Fox News obtained a written declaration from an ex-boyfriend of Christine Ford's. In that declaration, which was made under oath, the ex-boyfriend says that Ford once coached a friend through a polygraph exam to help her get a federal job. If true, that would contradict what Ford told Congress. The man also says that during their entire 6-year relationship, Ford never mentioned being a victim of sexual assault or of any other kind of trauma. He says that she flew on airplanes many times, including on small prop planes around Hawaii. You'll recall that her lawyer said she was too afraid to fly to come to Washington. They also said she was a claustrophobic. He claims she was not at all afraid of enclosed spaces. Are these claims true? We don't know. Ford disputes them, and there is no evidence to support them independently. But there's also no evidence, you'll remember, to support Ford's allegations against Brett Kavanaugh. And that is the point. We need to know more. But we don't know more because nobody is asking these questions and many other questions. For example, we still haven't seen Ford's therapy notes or the notes on the polygraph exam she says she took. Ford's legal team is only now, at the very last moment, offering to reveal these, but only if the FBI agrees to interview Christine Ford. Why weren't these notes turned over at the very beginning of all of this? If the goal was to get to the truth, they would have been, of course. Why has Ford apparently told different stories about whether she showed her therapy notes to the Washington Post or simply described their contents to the paper? That's significant because it bears directly on her credibility. And Christine Ford's credibility is literally the only reason to believe that her story is true. So that matters. And there are other obvious unanswered questions. Here's this one. Ford says the assault defined her entire life. Apparently, she thought about it every day. It defined her academic performance. It affected all of her personal relationships. And yet she says she told not a single other human being about it for fully 30 years. How can that be? Well, here's an idea. In a Washington Post profile, Ford says that she, quote, came to understand her assault and its significance during a psychotherapy session. What does that mean exactly? Is Ford's story, at least in part, a recovered memory? This is a central question because most psychiatrists consider recovered memories, however sincere, as roughly as reliable as dreams. It's worth getting a clear answer on that, but so far nobody has because nobody has asked that question. Why is that? When an adult makes a serious allegation, asking real questions is the only correct response. It's not an attack to ask for follow-ups or probe inconsistencies. It's not victim shaming. In fact, it's patronizing not to. We don't consider Christine Ford a child. Many of her advocates clearly do. The press obviously does. Instead of gathering facts about this story, they are busy moralizing and lecturing the rest of us about how Brett Kavanaugh's very existence proves that an entire class of people is evil.
And asking questions is the correct response. But how do they handle it? You ask a question, they respond with an accusation. They make an accusation, you ask for clarification, and they accuse you as well. Here's Vicky, so let's go to her. Good morning, how are you? I am so sorry that I had to do this quick. When I saw your emails this morning, I just realized how important this was, and I don't know, I haven't given you any time to prepare, and we don't need to spend a lot of time, I don't think. But I'm very concerned about the fact, and of course everybody's listening to me talking to you here. Let me put you on speakerphone, and then we'll be ready. Hold on just a second. Okay, remember to talk real loud so that everybody can hear you, but let me talk a little bit about you here for just a minute. So, Vicky, as I said, is an accomplished investigator. As I've said before, she would rather be called a systems analyst, I believe, in computer systems. But because of her knowledge there, she's a great investigator and can look into things very deeply. This thing with Molly McKew, I knew was a problem, but I was spellbound with what Vicky sent me this morning, and I'm just going to prep it by saying this. Here's a lady who says that, I'm talking about Molly McKew, who says that she's an expert in information warfare. She's basically working to help the Podesta group accomplish their purposes working with foreign nations, particularly Russia, Ukraine, those types of places. And I haven't looked at all the details, but it's pretty obvious. And yet, her emphasis seems to be Russian interference, Russian disinformation. You know, if she's working for the Podesta group and they're having these deals with Russia, to talk bad about Russia, you would think that that would be counterproductive to their basic corporate interests. So there's something that's not making a lot of sense here, and I'm hoping that Vicky will be able to get us going down that road. So Vicky, with that little introduction, I don't know how you want to start, but I think what this pretty much revolves around at this time is what you sent me last, which was this information on the Helsinki Commission. Can you sum that up real quick? Because apparently Molly McKew has something to do with that quite a bit.
Yeah, the reason I went to look at the Helsinki Commission, I went to the website. Now, the Helsinki Commission is actually a U.S. government, our government commission, and the purpose of it is to oversee the Helsinki Final Act. Now, the Helsinki Final Act was signed in 1975 with the idea of progressive cooperation with the Soviets. At the time it was signed, it was the Soviet Union, um, um, through what are called baskets of cooperation, which are segments of issues, sections of issues that the U.S. and the Soviet Union agreed to cooperate on. I do have links on the Helsinki Commission, or you can just look up Helsinki Commission and find it. But what that commission does, it basically negotiates and oversees the Helsinki Agreement. Now, I recognized Molly McKew's face from a hearing of the Helsinki Commission that I watched last year. So I went out and I found that hearing. It was on September the 14th, and it was on Russian disinformation. Okay, now if we take a look at everything that's happened since Trump was elected, it's all about Russia, it's all about disinformation. And what it makes me think is that what we're involved in this country is really a game scenario, and what's being done is essentially a kind of a negotiation in a way for items that need to be agreed upon through the Helsinki Commission. The way that they manipulate the public in the United States is through dialectics, and we see it a lot, more and more as time goes on. All public policy seems to be set based on a dialectic.
What do you mean by that? 'Cause some people might not really know what you mean by that, a dialectic.
Well, they set up a thesis, they come up with the opposite, the antithesis, and the resolution to the thesis and the antithesis is the synthesis. Okay.
So in other words, they set up the talking points, and that's all they're going to address. It's sort of like what she's saying is that, and I hate to interrupt here, but whatever she says, that's good information, but anything that anybody else talks about is information terrorism. So what they're doing is they're setting up the parameters for the discussion, and they won't let anybody bring in any other points.
Yes, for what you could call a global rule set on the boundaries of information activities within countries would be what I would call the overall objective. Something that was interesting, and what makes me think that is, a couple of weeks ago I watched a panel discussion of former U.S. trade representatives, and they were talking about how they are now the bad guys, because of all what's come out about all the trade agreements. Well, as they were talking, I realized that what they were actually negotiating, they weren't negotiating trade deals for our country. They were negotiating a rule book, a rule set. And so, they'd be thrilled that they got some rule agreed to that, oh, by the way, just happened to wipe out an entire sector of our economy. But their objective was to get this rule book written.
Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
And what we see happening a lot when they talk about the internet and globalization and all of that, they're really talking about the rule set.
So is in your opinion, where does Molly McKew sit in all of this, and why her attack on Jack Posobiec, Mike Cernovich, etc.?
Because I consider her to be a Russian agent practicing Russian disinfo.
So that's why she would attack constitutional Americans.
Yes, yeah, because well, it's like with the whole Russian collusion narrative. Below the surface, if you research beyond that, what it was really about was nationalizing a big part of our election system, federal takeover of our election system.
Right. Obama signed that over to the DHS, which has still not been repealed, which has still not been taken away.
Right. Well, the secretaries of state thankfully fought back. But what they wanted was a national voter registration database. See, they are centralizing all information about everybody, which is why I work really hard on this, because all that information will be used to control people, control their lives, control everything that they do. There won't be any more freedom.
So the real Soviet actually they are Soviet agents. The real leftist Marxist agents, the real Russian agents. Now I'm not saying that Russia is now anywhere near leftist Marxism or socialism or communism. I'm not saying that, but what I am saying is that the real Russian agents that we are talking about are people like Molly McKew, are the Democrats, are Republicans in name only, who go along with the likes of Hillary, the likes of Podesta, the likes of Obama, the likes of Holder, et cetera, et cetera. Am I right in that?
Yes, and they're centered I think the reason why they're centered at the universities is because one of the baskets of cooperation with the Soviet Union was the exchange of professors and scientists and so forth coming from the Soviet Union to the United States.
Now, I've got to stop you there. I've got to stop you there because that raises a question. Are we still dealing with the Russians based upon their Soviet model, or did we adjust in this Helsinki Commission? Did we adjust to the fact that they're trying to become democratic capitalists? What happened there?
I believe that the tables were turned on us, and the objective is to turn our country into a communist system.
And of course, we're seeing that. We're seeing that all the time. So you're absolutely correct. Sorry to interrupt you there, but this is a bombshell, actually, as far as I'm concerned, because of what she wrote in that article about information warfare and information terrorism, and turning that on the American people that disagree with her point of view. This is incredible. Very, very bad. If there's Russian interference with us, it's in that regard. It's not in keeping Trump out of office, or keeping Trump in office. So go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
Yeah, that's okay. That they are using on the American people the strategies that were used on the Soviet people, and for the same purpose. It's not to keep our country a free country. It is to, how would you say, agitate. There was a general that just spoke recently. His name is Lieutenant General Robert Ashley. And he is the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. And he, in speaking, one of the things that he talked about is reflexive control. A reflexive control is getting the other side to do what you want them to do without it being obvious that that's what you're doing.
Kind of like a husband does to his wife, or vice versa.
Yeah, kind of.
Make them think it's their idea. I get it. Funny.
Passive aggressive warfare.
I get it. Well, I hate to rush you on this, but can you give us your websites, and I will try to remember to put them in the description box like I've done before. Can you give those to us so people can go look at your material?
Yeah. My website is called thetechnocratictyranny.com.
And that's
I have an article. Yeah, my last article in there has the paper that what I think is the paper that Lieutenant General Ashley was talking about in terms of reflexive control. But it's really important to understand these strategies that are being used against us, because once you understand their strategy, then they can't do it to you anymore.
Right. It's obviously having information is important, but that's why they have deployed people like Molly McKew against those who are trying to, again, like I said at the beginning of this, every time that they make an accusation and our side addresses it with questions, their response isn't to address the issue or the question. Their response is to make another accusation. That is definitely mind control on a massive, massive scale. And I haven't really been trained in that, but I sure recognize it. Vicky, I want to thank you for coming. I hate to rush you on this, but there's another topic I have to get to that bears on actually what you're saying here. It has to do with the election that's coming up. I want to thank you for this. Maybe you can summarize in just a moment or so what you see as the major problem again with what Molly McKew is involved in here, and how the leftist Marxists in our government, be they rhinos or Democrats, it doesn't matter, are using this technique. Just a real quick summary again of everything you said.
Well, it appears to me that they're doing everything possible that they can to shut down people who are telling the truth, because their objective is to make people believe the opposite, believe things that are not true. And I've heard it said, I forget who said this, but once they reach the point where everything that you believe is not true, then they win.
Right. Yeah, that's tipping the scales to the point. I think it's the Overton window. It's very similar to that. Vicky, I want to thank you so much for coming on at a moment's notice. I know you're a busy lady. You've taken already 20 minutes with us that I took away from you. I want to thank you so much for that, and please keep in touch, okay?
Okay. Thank you, Roy.
Thank you. Wow. So we need to get this information. They've probably already looked up. Cernovich and Posobiec are very, very competent investigators, so I'm sure they're looking up some of this. I wanted you to hear that because I think it's very important to show you what's happening. And there are people in our government who are pushing this entire situation, which is why we have it's just getting out of control, which is why we're going to talk about something else here now. I'm going to play a short clip again. It's on Trump stating something about some of the Democratic operatives. Here we go.
Look at some of these people asking the questions, okay? Look at Blumenthal. He lied about Vietnam. He didn't just say, hey, I went to Vietnam. No. For 15 years, he said he was a war hero. He fought in Da Nang province. We call him Da Nang Richard. Da Nang, that's his nickname, Da Nang. He never went to Vietnam. And he's up there saying, we need honesty and we need integrity. This guy lied when he was the Attorney General of Connecticut. He lied. I don't mean a little bit. And then when he got out, he actually dropped out of the race, and he won anyway, because Democrats always win in Connecticut. He won very close, probably the closest ever. But here's a guy lied, and now he's up there talking like he's holier than thou. You know what? Take a look at his record. And when he got out, and when he apologized, he was crying. The tears were all over the place. And now he acts like, how dare you? Take a look at the judge who has led an exemplary life. I mean, you're going back to high school because he had beer? I think the judge has been pretty amazing about describing his situation with alcohol and with beer. I mean, take a look at Cory Booker. He ran Newark, New Jersey into the ground. He was a horrible mayor. And he made statements that when he was in high school or college, what he was doing, he actually made the statements. And now he's talking about Judge Kavanaugh. And I could go through a whole list of them, okay? Look at Dianne Feinstein. You're telling me about time. Dianne Feinstein knew about this 2 months earlier. If she wanted a really thorough investigation, we had all the time in the world. She didn't have to wait till after the hearing was closed, essentially. She should have said, listen, I have a problem. I have this report. I'd like the FBI to look at it while we're doing the hearings. We had 2 months. No, she didn't do that. She waited till we were closed. And then she probably leaked it, but, you know, who am I to say? But she probably...
Okay, I think that's enough there. Putting that together with what we've seen happen to both Trump and to Judge Kavanaugh and others, but those are the big ones, and what we've heard from Vicky Davis today, it's obvious that operatives like Molly McKew and the leftist Marxists dispersed throughout our government, and we were warned about this many years ago, even though Russia has left that Soviet-style system, has left communism. But you got to kind of understand the strategic move here. If Russia really fears the United States, which if they were bright they would, if you ever listen to Paul Craig Roberts, he'll explain why the Russians shouldn't trust the Americans, and I fully 100% agree. But if you know that a communist system fails, which they do, what better way to take out a perceived enemy like the United States than to assist in it becoming a leftist, Marxist, communist state? Think about it. Think about it. That's what people like Molly McKew, Dianne Feinstein, Senator Schumer, Obama, Hillary Clinton, Eric Holder, Loretta Lynch, Valerie Jarrett, etc., are trying to do. They are trying to impose a Soviet Maoist-style government in the United States, contrary to our constitutional republic. And in this method, what are they doing? Exactly what Molly McKew did. We get to say what we want to say. You can't. That's Soviet propaganda control, Soviet information control, Maoist communication control. We get to say what we want, but anything that you say counter to us is illegal. And if you ask us, if we accuse somebody of something or we say something that's accusatory and you ask us what we mean, we're going to come back and we're just going to accuse you more. That's how they handle it. And then we've seen that with this whole thing with Brett Kavanaugh. That has been, with Judge Kavanaugh, that's been exposed for everyone to see. So we're in a dire situation here. The Western alliances, and when I say that, I'm talking about the United States and NATO primarily, but especially the intelligence communities, which I've long warned about. Again, what's the slogan on my channel? The intelligence community is our most dangerous domestic enemy, and that's absolutely 100% true. We've seen it with all of the coup situation with Trump going after people like Posobiec and Cernovich, et cetera, et cetera. It's all been laid out for us to see. Now the question is, what are we going to do about it? Well, one thing's for sure, and again, I'm critical of Trump. And we need to be critical of our leaders. I mean, I don't know if you know the history, and I shouldn't bring this up, but I have to. And I'm not saying they were right, but in the New Testament, it talks about Jesus, and he's doing these things, and he's not doing the things that they expect him to do. Some of his apostles, right? Some of his disciples. So they come to him and say, "Hey, why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? Why aren't you getting your army together and go attack the Romans and the Herodians and all of this?" And he says, that's not what we're about at this point, right? So I understand that precedent for wanting our leaders to step up and take out the evil has been around for a very long time. But I also understand, just like in that situation, that things have to be done at the proper time and the proper place. I just hope that Trump isn't holding off because of his, I don't think he can hold off. I think he's moving down that road, but at this point in time, a lot of people, like American intelligence media, are saying he's winning all over the place. Well, I don't look at it that way. I'm very concerned. And we need to, even though I don't trust all the Republicans, I'm a libertarian actually, but I understand the political situation where we are right now and how important it is that we give Trump totally a chance to make this thing work. If he betrays us, well, we got to find that out anyway. Okay, either way or the other, we got to find that out. So let's give him the opportunity. So he's saying you're giving him rope to hang us with. Well, a lot of people won't look at it that way. But the way I look at it is we have to give him every opportunity to move ahead. And one of the necessary things here is to hold the Senate and the House. We have to hold Congress. I don't like that ideological battle. I don't, but it's reality. Because a lot of these Republicans, of course, they get in there, and the IC gets them in there and gives them their briefing and say, if you don't go along with us, we're gonna muddy up your name, or we're gonna firebomb you, or we're gonna whatever, threaten them, whatever. I know those things happen. Oh, you need to come on board with our deep state, shadow government, new world order, because that's where the future is. I understand all that's happening, but we have to at least give Trump a chance to get past that. That's the way I look at it. No, I don't like some of his foreign policy, and I'm not going to get into all of that because that's, again, I'm just saying we won't be able to know what the end result is unless we know what it would be with Hillary. We know what it would be with Obama, etc., with Soros. We know what the end result is. Maybe Trump's on that same sheet of music, but so far, the evidence doesn't suggest that. It suggests that he's waffling in some areas, but he's going in the generally the right direction. So we have to give him the opportunity, in my estimation, to accomplish that. So the midterms are coming up. So this is what I wanted to end on, and then we'll go to chat. Actually, I could do a bunch more stuff, but we'll just leave it at this. My Republican insider got a hold of me last night, and he said, would you be willing to discuss this information I'm going to give you? And I said, absolutely, because we are at that point where we have to take this action. Yes, I realize that the ballot box is rigged. I realize that they wouldn't give us the ballot box if they thought it would actually matter. In other words, if voting worked, they'd make it illegal. I know all the arguments there, but there's something to be said about a voice going out in unison. Many, many voices going out in unison. The Democrats and the leftist Marxists, that's what they're good at organizing. Because in their situation, I've talked about this before, how they enforce their position is a promise of reward and fear. That's what they work under. Libertarians or constitutional republic supporters, those types of people, we are fiercely independent, and our biggest weakness is we don't like to organize. The only place we ever seem to really do that is in voting, and we can't let this midterm slip without getting out there and doing this. With all the caveats I've said here, I still think that's important. So this is going to be the nuts and bolts of the republic for the next 5 or 10 minutes. It's kind of boring, but the people in the relevant states need to take heed. All I'm going to say is that you need to get out and vote so that you can give Donald Trump the chance he needs to move forward, if in fact that's really what he's about, and I personally believe he is. So I got this information last night from my Republican insider. I think you'll be able to see this guy knows what he's doing. And this is a concern right now. We hear arguments that, a big red wave is going to happen, and then we hear arguments that a big blue wave is going to happen. You never take chances with the enemy, ever. Let me read what he says here. Okay, this is from my Republican insider who sent all this. It was really a lot of information. Give me 5 minutes, I'm going to read through it. And if you hear your state and you hear the people that are running in your races there in your state, take heed and give this some very serious thought. 1. Nevada, Republican Dean Heller versus Democrat Jackie Rosen. Polling. Rosen up by 4. Heller is an unpopular Republican incumbent. It's still close and could go either way. It's a toss-up. You Republicans got to get out, and those Democrats who understand and independents who understand the difficulty we're in, Let's give Trump a chance. We need to get Dean Heller in Nevada. Number 2, Arizona. Jeff Flake is an open seat. I think we all know that, and he is a flake. Republican Martha McSally versus Democrat Kristen Sienna. Polling. Sienna is up by 2 to 3 points in 2 different recent polls. McSally should have won this seat easily. Instead, she is losing ground to Sienna, however you say her name. It's disappointing and puzzling. It's a toss-up. Probably some voter fraud, some polling fraud going on there. Regardless, Republicans, we need to support Martha McSally. Again, to give Trump the opportunity to do this that he needs. 3, Texas. Republican Ted Cruz versus Beto O'Rourke. The polling. Cruz is up by 9 points and pulling away. He'll probably win. But just make sure, okay? If you're in Texas, go vote for Cruz. Number 4, Tennessee, Bob Corker. It's an open seat. Republican Marsha Blackburn, I think most of us know who she is, versus Phil Bredesen. The polling shows that Blackburn, the Republican, is up by 5 and gaining momentum. Blackburn will probably win. Let's ensure it. Number 5, Mississippi, Republican Roger Wilker versus Democrat David Berea. I'm not sure how to say his name. The polling, it shows that Wilker, the Republican, is up by 11. Wilker will win. Let's make sure. Okay, also in Mississippi, there's an open seat. Cindy Hyde Smith, Republican versus Democrat Mike Espy. In the polling, it shows that Hyde Smith, the Republican, is up by 14 points, so she should win. So 4 Republican wins and 2 toss-up seats within the margin of error is what he's saying. He really knows his stuff. Point is, get out and vote. Okay, Indiana. Democrat John Donnelly versus Republican Mike Braun. The polling shows that Donnelly, the Democrat, is up by 2 points within the margin of error. Toss-up, but Donnelly is vulnerable to lose his seat. In other words, the Republican can take it. Let's make sure that the Republican does. Missouri, Democrat Claire McCaskill. You all should know who she is and the embarrassment that she is. Democrat Claire McCaskill versus the contestant Republican Josh Hartley. The polling shows that McCaskill is up by 2 points. It's within the margin of error. Toss-up, but McCaskill is vulnerable and should lose the seat to the Republican, and we got to make sure that happens. Montana, Democrat John Tester versus Republican Matt Rosendale. Polling. Tester is up by 4. That's the Democrat, is up by 4, but it's within the margin of error, and he's slipping. The Republican Rosendale would be an upset win likely in conservative Montana, but we have to ensure it. So you Montanan Republicans, independents who want to conserve the constitutional republic and give Trump this chance, you need to go vote for Rosendale. West Virginia, Democrat Joe Manchin. I think most of you know who he is. He's been supportive of Trump, but he's kind of back and forth. Anyway, let me read what he says here. West Virginia, Democrat Joe Manchin versus Republican Patrick Morrissey. Polling. Manchin is up by 8 points. That's the Democrat. But lead support slipping. Manchin is a popular incumbent in a huge Trump state. My Republican insider says that Manchin will probably win. Just take note, Republicans. 5, North Dakota, Democrat Heidi Heitkamp versus Republican Kevin Cramer. Polling. Cramer is up by 12 points. Cramer will win by over 10 points. Make sure that he does. Florida, Bill Nelson versus Rick Scott, a Republican. Polling. Nelson, the Democrat, is up by 1 point and dead even in another poll. Rick Scott, the Republican, who was a former very popular governor of Florida, who was turned out of governorship. It's a toss-up race that could go to Rick Scott in a nail-biter. He calls it a nail-biter. Again, we need to make sure that former Governor Rick Scott, who is running there as the Republican, wins that seat. New Jersey, Bob Menendez. Oh, my gosh. Bob Menendez. The pervert of perverts. Haskell. Jerry Epstein, I mean, we could go on and on and on. He's been up under investigation several times. They should have censored him and thrown him out of the Senate a long time ago. New Jersey, Bob Menendez versus Bob Hugan, who is the Republican. Polling, Menendez is up by 6 points and 2 points in two most recent polls. This says something about the American people. Either they're totally ignorant or they're wicked and evil to allow this guy to stay there. The people in New Jersey. Sort of like Harry Reid in Nevada or John McCain in Arizona. Something definitely wrong with our understanding of right and wrong and good versus evil and constitutional versus Soviet-style governments. Let me go back to this. Menendez is up by 6 points and 2 points in two most recent polls. Menendez has narrowly escaped prison twice for alleged financial crimes and also the investigations on some of the nasty stuff that's happening. I'm going to be careful what I say there. And Bob Hugan is a heavy hitter. Bob Hugan is the Republican, is a heavy hitter who can pump millions into his campaign in the last few weeks. Bob Hugan could possibly pull off one of the greatest upsets in the 2018 Senate races. There in New Jersey, ladies and gentlemen, throw Menendez out and bring in Bob Hugan, okay? If you heard your state there mentioned, and the incumbent and the challenger, please get out and don't forget to vote. If you're in an area that has you should get out and vote regardless, okay, to make sure that Trump has his mandate. So no matter where you are, get out and vote and put people in there that will support President Trump and the effort to restore the constitutional republic. And if it's a betrayal in motion, well, again, like I said, we're going to have to find out, right? We got to give it the opportunity because we certainly would have gone down the betrayal road and the leftist Marxist road if Hillary had gotten in or anybody from the Democratic Party. Okay, that's the way I look at it. So that's where we are. I'm going to take a short break and I'll come back and we'll get on the chat for a few minutes. Like I said, there was a whole lot more stuff I wanted to get into. Like they arrested a Democrat. Congressional intern for doxing, and so doxing is illegal in most places, and it certainly is in this situation where he was revealing basically controlled information about Senate individuals. So he's been charged with witness tampering, making public restricted info, threats in interstate communication, unauthorized access to government computers, identity theft, second-degree burglary. You might wonder about that. I could explain it, but I won't. And unlawful entry. He worked for Republican Sheila Jackson. Does anybody realize that name? It's been in the news lately. She tries to make herself known. Has worked for Democratic Senator McGill Hassan, Democrat of New Hampshire, former Senator Barbara Boxer of California, and, of course, the infamous Dianne Feinstein. So that's what we're looking at there. Okay, I'm going to take a short break. I'm going to play just a little thing that I did the other day. Some of you will be very upset about what I say here, but you need to see the view anyway. So here we go. Well, I'm west of Salt Lake City. It's been raining, and I looked back and I saw this beautiful rainbow, and I just had to take a short movie of it, short video. Look how beautiful that is, and it's what it symbolizes. If you don't know what it symbolizes, I mean, I know there's a scientific reason for it existing, but it's one of the most important promises from God that's represented in a rainbow. And unfortunately, in this era of political correctness, we're supposed to allow this beautiful symbol of God's promise to be usurped and used by those with corrupt practices. And I'm just going to say it that way. So just like the devil always does, he takes something of God's and he twists it and he uses it for his own evil purposes. And I am calling it that. A lot of you will know what I'm referring to. So anyway, This is out in a place called Saltaire. This used to be a huge beach area for people in Salt Lake to come out and enjoy the the saline, actually the brine water of Salt Lake. There used to be roller coasters here at a big amusement park, and this thing here called the Saltaire, the original one, it was burned down, and then they rebuilt it, and I think it burned down again, and then they rebuilt this, and it flooded. Anyway, a lot of activity with this particular building here, but it's about maybe a quarter the size of what it was back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Out there you see Antelope Island. But I just couldn't go by and not take a picture of this absolutely beautiful rainbow. And it was really vibrant here just before I got my camera out, but I think you can see what it was like. All right, now I'll talk to you in a little while. Okay, as I said, I will speak my mind. And historically, I can prove all of those things that I talk about in regards to that and other things. Okay, let's go to chat. Might as well do that for a few minutes here and see if I can answer any questions that are going on there. Okay, boy, it's jumping quick. Let's see what I can find here. I'm going to run up to the top. All right, the Book of Thomas is on point. I am. That's great that you know about that. Yes, the Gnostic Gospels. A lot of it's pseudepigrapha, but it's written very close to the time period, as you well know, of the first century. So it is important information, and you need to take it into consideration. So thank you for bringing that up, whoever that was. Let's see. This is interesting. Kenya Gate Spy says, DOJ presser today, indictments, Russia, great job, Trader Sessions. I'm not certain what's going on there. Thank you for the tip. We'll have to look at it. And Happy Times, you're saying, I'm watching Trump ushering in every new world order agenda on the table faster than Hillary ever could have. Well, that's not entirely true. I agree that there's some things that are happening that are disturbing. I agree with that. But if you think it's faster than what Hillary would have done, no. So we're just going to... We just have to give this a chance, okay? That's all I'm saying. If we go down, then the fact of the matter is we'll know we've been betrayed. There's really nothing else that you can do. Did you ever see Braveheart? William Wallace, played by Mel Gibson. I always called him Mike. Played by Mel Gibson. And how he was betrayed by his friend and mentor, Bruce, and Bruce's father. Do you remember that? And he believed that Bruce would assist him, and he didn't. Okay? And I realize that that's a possibility, but it's one of those things where you just got to go down that road, because we really don't... Back a few weeks ago, I did a video where I was walking out in a pond area, and bridges to me mean something, and there was this bridge I crossed, and means a transition from one thing to another. And on that bridge, because I had this very question about Trump, and on that bridge it said, when there's nowhere else to go, stay. It was an answer to a prayer, and it makes sense. Because regardless of what Trump is, again, I'm going to throw in another point here. The Tet in the Hebrew alphabet, which really symbolizes the satanic influence, the accuser, the instructor is really what it is. It could be that Trump is the instructor. He could be the personification of the Tet, to see if we will have the discernment to choose the right. But supporting him in what's right, if he betrays us, that's his problem, and he will pay the price for it. Okay? When there is nowhere else to go, stay. He can't act fast enough as far as I'm concerned. And I've said that for a long time. And anybody who's followed me knows that I've said that he should take the U.S. Marshals, backed up by DHS and parts of the Treasury Department, and certainly the logistical support and backup support by the U.S. Marine Corps, and raid the CIA, the FBI, the Department of State, etc. You know I've said that. That's how I feel about it. But it's going to start a shooting order. Look, Ricine has been sent to Mattis, has been sent to Admiral Richardson, who's the Chief of Naval Operations, and it's been sent to Trump. And I don't think those were random. I am certain, because of the way things are coming out, that this was a warning shot to those guys from the deep state shadow government side, from the Obama supporters. I'm willing to bet on it, that it's not some geek out here that's made it and sent it in. They'll try to make it look like that, but then they'll probably have a fall guy set up to take the fall. But that's not where it came from. I'm willing to bet on it. They will kill Trump. These things wouldn't be happening if Trump was, in fact, trying to betray us, trying to set us up. I mean, it's going too far. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's over the top. They could have just let Hillary in. I mean, that would have done it. Why all of this other theatrics, all these other dramatics? They could have let Hillary win and it would have been done and over with. So I can't buy at this point that Trump is knowingly betraying our trust. I just can't buy it. Okay. Edelson James, Roy, I'm not a troll. Promise, I'm not a troll. Okay, Edelson, I'm sorry if I've been hard on you. I don't always know what's going on here if you're talking to other people or whatever. I haven't banned you. I don't mind people disagreeing with me as long as we don't call each other names. Like I could have called that picture of Molly McKew I showed you earlier. I sure could have called her some names, but I refrained from it. There was some innuendo, but I didn't go there. So, no, you're okay. We're good. We're fine, okay? Thanks for saying that, okay? Pulling me back. Even my Republican friend says, because I'm a soldier by training and a police officer by training. So I'm a gung-ho, go get the bad guys, go get them. So I have a combative personality when it comes to defending the constitutional republic. And when it comes to defending what I consider to be truth. Am I going to hurt somebody over it? No, not unless they shoot first, okay? But by the same token, I don't mince my words. So we've had a little bit back and forth, and maybe I misunderstood what you were saying, but please forgive me. And thanks for sticking around. No, I'm not going to ban you. Most of the time you say, at least you may not disagree, or maybe you say something that's actually you're joking or whatever. But I get pretty worked up. Maybe if we were in person, I could tell that you're joking or whatever. But just be patient with me, okay? Look at what my overall emphasis is, and I think we see eye to eye. Thanks for bringing that up. And the finest Planet 88, I understand your concern. This person says, I'm so done with the endless blankety blank. Tell you the truth, I believe it when I see it. If Trump betrays it, look like it's a slower death compared to Clinton. Yeah, and I understand your frustration with that. But if you've ever been in any kind of a war, be it as a police officer or a soldier, tactics are important. There is a method to the madness. There actually is. Well, there would be veterans that would disagree with that, but that's the theory anyway, okay? Jana Williams, I shouldn't repeat this, but I have to. She says to Edelson James, I asked my training sergeant when I should use my gun. He said when everyone else is using theirs. There's a smart training sergeant there. Yes, I know about Trump's sister, Marianne Trump Berry. I know about that. Yes, I know. Like I say, there are elements here, but I go back to the situation with Moses, just as an example. Moses was in Pharaoh's court. He was amongst them. Even if you don't believe the Bible, the storyline is important to understand, okay? The lesson that he was in the Pharaoh's court, and then he got awoke, Okay? And he realized what was really going on, and he took action in that regard. But you have to do so wisely, right? Or you get exiled like Moses did in the story. In fact, historically, Jesus was in the aristocratic circles. Most people want to think he was a poor little boy born in a manger. No, his father was actually a major architect. Anyway, they say he was a carpenter, but really what Jesus was, he followed in his father's footsteps. He was an architect by trade. So he wasn't some dumb little guy, growing up in a poorhouse. He was tied to the aristocratic circles. He had to come out of that. Moses was a type and shadow of that. Okay, Joseph of Egypt was Zaphnath Paneah, was another example of that. Those are types and shadows. So I have to give Trump a chance here. I do. He's seen the other side. Have you? Have you been there? Have you seen that side? Do you know how they operate? Do you know about their evil firsthand? No, we talk about it. But maybe Trump knows it for real because he was with them. That's why I'm giving him the shot, okay? I have to. Again, when there's nowhere else to go, stay. Just some of these are just so good. Recap, please. I'm late. Serena S. Okay. Basically, we talked about Molly McKew, who basically says that we're information terrorists. You can go back and look at the entire broadcast afterwards. We brought on Vicky Davis to talk about Molly McKew and her ties to Russia and the Soviet model and the Helsinki Commission that's actually trying to push the Soviet model onto the United States. Which is the Helsinki Commission is a United States thing, but they're trying to force that Soviet Maoist model onto us. And then basically we went to the information on the different races that are really important right now. But no matter where you are, you need to vote. So that's kind of a recap of what I've done here. Does CIA control the Vatican or vice versa? Wow, Michael Cecile. That's a good question. My guess is that they're all intertwined. I don't think the Vatican is the top of the pyramid. The IC are the foot soldiers of the evil side. I think it's bigger than that. The Vatican is certainly up near the top, but I wouldn't want to say that the CIA, despite all the Jesuit activity and all that, I wouldn't want to say that the Vatican is the top of that pyramid. I don't think so. I'm still wary of it. I've actually visited the Vatican. I probably will. I'll probably make one of my earlier. When I went there, I took video, but it was on an older camera, so I have to do a conversion. But I might put that up, my visit to the Vatican. You might find it interesting. I mean, there's some crazy stuff there. There really is. Okay. Craig Cloffer. Mitt Romney told us it was Russia. Trust the incoming senator from Utah. I'm not sure where you're going with that. I do not like Mitt Romney. I don't trust Mitt Romney. He's another Evan McMullin. If you know who Evan McMullin is of the CIA, Mitt Romney and Evan McMullin would be two peas in a pod. Mitt Romney is not a good man. I don't care what anybody says. Anybody who is associated, well, I'll just leave it at that. I'm very upset that Mitt Romney is running for this Senate seat. I'm very upset about that. But technically, I'm not a Utahn anymore. But I see Utahns making these same mistakes time after time, going after people that sit with those people up at 47 East South Temple and are real cozy with them. And the Mormons don't know what they're dealing with in their own leadership. Mitt Romney's an example, and they don't even know it. He smiles and he talks real, he talks benignly. He's not. He's not benign by any means. Yeah, thank you. Do not trust Mitt Romney. I agree. That's from Diane Etzer, something like that. Outlaw Hillbilly, vote all red. We have to. We have to see where Trump's going to go with this. If he betrays us, he betrays us. We got to find out. We have to give it a chance. Denise James, I'm independent, but I agree with Roy. Mainly educate upon cultural Marxism and Hegelian dialectic. Problem, reaction, solution. We need to take back the narrative. Absolutely, Denise. Thank you for bringing that up. Perfect. Outstanding. Okay, now that's where I came in. So let's see if there's anything else here. What I'm looking for, in case you want to know, is if anybody's asking a particular question about Molly McKew or about Vicky Davis's explanation. That's what I'm looking for. Kenny Gates spies. McSally is a super rhino. I know. But look at the alternative. It's a bad situation. The leftist Marxists have infiltrated everything. We're in a very bad situation right now, and it could go either way. That's why I say prep, pray, stay out of the way. When I say stay out of the way, I don't mean don't vote. I don't mean not to be involved in the political situation in your area. I mean, if the shooting war starts, don't think that you should be involved, okay? That's what I'm saying. Unless you go to the sheriff or somebody like that who's a constitutionalist and you offer them your help. Don't be out there running around in the woods like the militias do. Debbie Donovan, LDS Incorporated has lots of cases of concerted sexual abuse coming out. One involving Prophet's daughter story was in the Deseret News this week. Really? Wow, Debbie, thank you for that information. Hopefully people start thinking twice about auto voting IDs. LDS rather. Yes, I could speak to a lot of that, Debbie. You probably know about it. I was involved in some investigations around some LDS leaders, both in the Franklin cover-up and also when I was in the Murray Police Department. I was privy to information there. And I've mentioned it in a video when I did a little tour around Salt Lake City. You were there, as a matter of fact. I remember your comments, and thank you for those. Yes, we'll have to get together and have a beer sometime down there in Utah Valley. I was hoping that I'd get some more people that want to meet somewhere, but Porter's would be a good place, right? I mean, that'd fit along with my name, right, and my history. We could go to Porter's there in Lehigh, sit and have a hamburger and a beer or two. We'll work on that with anybody else that would like to show up. But anyway, at any rate, I did talk about that during my live stream that day. Remember when I was showing all of that? And the fact that I knew the evidence custodian for Salt Lake City Police Department, where they kept the tape, the evidence, and then it disappeared. Oh, I'm very aware of all of that. Yes, thank you. There was I think he was a presiding bishopric, I'm not really sure, Elder Pace, who brought out the sexual satanic abuse in the church, and they got rid of him. He talked about it publicly, and they got rid of him. Yeah, the LDS don't realize what they've got up there at 47 East South Temple. Okay. JM, I DM'd you on Twitter and never heard back. I have info you will want to hear. JM, I'm very careful about and I've said this before. I don't mean to be rude, okay, but too often when I've reached out to people that have contacted me, it has not turned out well, by and large. You could say that's a personality characteristic problem of mine, but it just hasn't worked out very well. I'm willing to come here and talk to you here. If you have something that you want me to know about, write it in. You can send me a DM. I've probably looked at your DM, but I probably haven't addressed it. I haven't answered back. Out of all the people, when I opened up my DMs to anybody who wanted to send me information, I did that more because there might be something there like what you have. But I'm telling you, almost every time I've contacted somebody directly that has wanted me to do that, it's been a disaster. It's very disheartening. But it's indicative of what these social platforms are and how people can hide their true character. That's why I never came on here with a pseudonym. I mean, Roy Potter QA, but I did that in 2009 as a question-answer thing. But I've always presented myself, the real person. Man, too many people don't do that. And I understand why, good people would want to do that. But I also have to tell you that when you do that, when you hide who you really are, it's a problem. It can be a real problem, and it's It's been a disaster more than once. Let's see here. I'm going through to see if there's any question on what I was talking about there. Oh, hey, Diane Netzer, you say you work downtown Salt Lake City. See, there are a few people. I asked if we wanted to get together. Again, on this video here, if you want to leave a comment in the description box, I'll go back and look at that. It'd be nice to get together. We'll see. Okay, that's all I can say. And yet, it probably will be Porter's and Lehigh. Okay, Porter Rockwell, remember them? Okay. Yeah, he was a Danite and all that, but concerns about Kavanaugh and Gorsuch went to Georgetown Prep at the same time as gay Jesuit. I understand what you're saying. But we don't want to get into a situation where we because this is what the Democrats were doing. This is what Blasey Ford was doing. Going back to high school and college and saying that that's the same person we've got today. Not necessarily. Judge Kavanaugh has seen the evil side now. He may have gone along with these things, like I said before, the Patriot Act, the deal on the Fourth Amendment, that kind of stuff. He's been too supportive of that. But now he sees the evil firsthand. If he's putting on a show, well, again, where would we be otherwise? Same spot. So maybe he's seeing what he's supported all these years and is repenting of it. Let's hope so. Jen Manga, can't stand Harry Reid. Boy, isn't that the case? Me neither. Okay, I think I'm done because, here, one more thing here. Okay, I must have missed that. Okay. Yeah, I think we're done. We've gone for over an hour and 15 minutes. I want to thank everybody for coming this morning. Appreciate your input. Hopefully you found today interesting. Like I said, it was a totally different program than what I was planning on. We're still going to do the bad women, good women thing. I heard back from the individual that had surgery. She's doing better, but we're going to need to give her a week or two. Okay? Probably. But we will be working on that. Keep your eyes on the horizon, your ears to the ground. Prep, pray, stay out of the way. Keep your situational awareness on high. God bless you. God bless the Constitutional Republic of the United States of America and the Second American Revolution. And God bless Donald Trump and all of his righteous endeavors. And may the spirit of discernment, Spirit of the Lord and his discernment descend upon President Trump as the dews from heaven, that he will know the right from the wrong and have the courage to do the right thing. God bless you, everybody. See you next time.